Mává na mě, že jo.
Good morning, everybody. A chilly and frozen morning again. I just hope this is gonna be one of the last ones, so I'm counting down. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome here two guests we've got here in Prague. One of them is Suarez. Sorry, Martin, he's the client and probably older. Who is known as from couple of articles as email-less guy, but I'm sure he will introduce much more things about his work and his expertise here. And he's IBM, so this is the client we've been working for around the globe. And Martin Lange is our mobile specialist, mobile marketing, who is Ogilvy one, as you can see, who just traveled to Prague to go back to New York just today afternoon. So big thanks to you that you are simply having such a tough 2 days, I'm sure. But I hope it's gonna pay off for you as well as for us. We are gonna have some, I don't know, 90 minutes of conversation, and I hope you will enjoy it at least as much as will enjoy I this. So thank you very much for coming and enjoy.
Thank you. Good morning again. My name is Jakub Hodboť. I'm a strategist at Ogilvy One, and I'm really pleasured that we can welcome you today at an event which is called Social, Mobile, and B2B. And let me start with one number: 115. Does anyone know what this number could mean? Could be my heart rate, actually. We're probably raising right now. But actually, according to research, it's a number of business emails that, on average, we read and write every day. 115. It's quite a big number, isn't it? And if you think about it, to read and reply 115 emails, wow, it's taking quite a long time. So it makes me wonder whether we're really using some of the tools that were designed to make our lives easier in a way that it's really making our lives easier. Aren't we actually becoming sort of slaves of some of the technology that has been invented just a couple of decades ago? And there was another interesting research I read the other day. University of California, they found out that there is a link between number of emails you receive and probability that you will get a heart disease. It's University of California, Irvine. And therefore, I'm really thrilled that we can have a person, a global authority here today, who managed to get rid of email already 5 years ago. This famous technology magazine Wired once called him amazing email-less man. And indeed, it's Mr. Luis Suarez, who's been with IBM and worked for IBM for some years, and he's their global social computing evangelist. So we will hear a lot about how companies can collaborate these days in a more smarter, better, more efficient way without email or with tools that are based in a social environment. You probably know this creature. It's Angry Bird, a game that started in 2009 on iPhones, and it was created by a Finnish company, Rovio, just a few guys. It's now having a profit of a couple $2 billion per year. You can get a Coke branded by Angry Birds. There is Angry Birds are on the helmet of Formula One driver, and there will be a movie, 3D movie, in upcoming years. And you can even buy in Thailand shoes that are branded by Angry Birds. It's so even our own original Czech brand went together with Angry Birds to create something interesting. But there is something much more interesting behind all these headlines about successful companies that made it and that created a lot of revenue from just creating a cool mobile game. And our next guest will talk about how these guys can be used, again, in a smart way to create additional value for customers, to make companies and teams work in a more efficient way. And therefore, I am again very, very pleased that we can invite Ogilvy's mobile guru, Martin Lange, who's Executive Managing Director at Ogilvy in New York, and who's responsible for our global mobile strategies, working for major clients such as IBM, DuPont, British Airways, or UPS. So the way we'll do it today, we will first hear Martin talking for about 30 minutes. Then we'll hear Louis' keynote, and then there will be time for your questions and answers, and hopefully a fruitful discussion. Martin, stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Jakob, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. I know that we have, I think, a pretty mixed audience where we don't just have B2B marketers, but also B2C. Could I quickly, who's operating a B2B marketplace? All right, and B2C marketplace would be the others? Okay, good. It's about a 50-50 mix. So that's one of the reasons why we take this as at a 30,000 feet level, what we say, a look at the mobile landscape, so to say. I've called this embracing mobility as a strategic asset. I think where the industry is a very, very interesting intersection right now. We've seen mobile essentially become almost a commodity, and you'll see this in the slides I'll be showing for consumers and employees alike. And we've seen companies like all of yourselves that have been playing in the mobile space so far. There probably isn't a single company that hasn't developed an app and thrown it out, and you all probably have developed apps that have had 10 downloads, and then you've wondered where that investment went. So we've seen a lot of experimentation in the mobile space, and I think we're at a point in time now where the inflection is so far down the road that we have to think about mobile as a strategic asset within a company context. And this is, I'm trying to make a little bit of sense with this, give you a little bit overview of the landscape, try to find. I have 3 categories of how we typically look at mobile and how we want to, how we want to attack it from an enterprise perspective, and then try to at the end sum it up and make sense from all the things that you've seen before, and bring that back to 5 key takeouts from this. So, anybody know what this was? And maybe you've seen the picture already. This was 2005 when the first German was elected Pope. When the German Bild Zeitung titled "We Are Pope," and all of Germany was out there. This is quite an interesting picture, 2005, and just very recently, when all of a sudden, same situation, same settlement, and all of a sudden, what's happening? You'd wonder, is this really a use case to have your tablet and take pictures? Yes, it is. People are doing it. When I, for the first time about 2 years ago, I saw somebody taking out a tablet, taking a picture with it. I took a picture of that person because I thought that would be a unique one, but actually you see it quite often. But you see of how mobile has actually, become a thread in our daily life. And mobile is not just taking the phone and messaging with it. And although text messaging is still by far the number one use case that people are actually pursuing with their phones, what we see now is mobile has entered the kitchen. We're reading recipes, and when we're saying, I'll talk a little bit about the definition of mobile in a second, because tablets and phones, there's a very a fine line, or actually a very distinct line between them. We see mobile being used as a second screen device while I'm watching sports and tweeting about what we're seeing. Just one number, the Grammys is one of the most socialized events, so to say, in parallel. Last year we saw 160,000 tweets per minute around the Grammys when they were taking place, just with the Grammys hashtag. So you see mobile being used as a second device while watching TV. Social and mobile are essentially the same. There's no need to differentiate this anymore. But what we're also doing is we're monitoring, for example, medication intake with our mobile phones that help us, stay on the calendar if we have to take regular medication. We're able to use sensors from our mobile phones in order to measure our heart rate, for example. So we use it as a medication device. There was at the Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, somebody was saying in 5 years, 80% of all doctors will be out of their jobs because mobile devices will do a lot of the diagnostics that doctors used to do in their offices. So those are these predictions that we see going forward. Everybody who goes running essentially either has a Fitbit or a Fuel Band, or you use your phone essentially to track where you're running and then to be really proud of how long you've run or not, and then post it. But we're now even gamifying this. So you now have apps on your phone where you're not just running and tracking, but you're actually running away from zombies. So you have an extra incentive to run faster when you go on trick. And then there's the ubiquitous discussion around mobile payments. I'll come to mobile payments at the very, very, very end of this presentation. But we all know we're all in the middle of trying to figure out what that marketplace actually will look like. There's thousands of players essentially that try to get a slice of that huge cake that's apparently there. Yet nobody's really tried to figure it out, has really figured it out, at least to the point where we can say there really is a use case for mobile payments that's been successful. And this is not just Western European or North American trend, but mobility is a trend that's going global. So while in the US or Western Europe we're looking at roughly 50% smartphone penetration, where's the Czech Republic right now? 30, 35. In the US it's right now growing at 80% of all phones sold are smartphones. You have 2.5 years essentially turnover rate, so you can predict by what time we'll be at 80%. We probably won't go over it, but we'll be there in a couple of years, quite fast. But if you go to China, urban India, and you see smartphone penetration rates, they're quite high there as well. And specifically in countries like India, China, Indonesia, Africa, nobody has ever used a desktop computer and nobody will ever use a desktop computer. They will all be accessing all the information through mobile devices. So they're essentially leapfrogging the desktop generation that we've all still lived through. And then what we're seeing is the speed of how new form factors or new devices are being introduced into the market. To read this correctly, these are quarters here, and this is these are units being sold into the market. So it took the iPhone essentially 6 quarters after launch to sell roughly about 10 million units. 10 million units. In the same time, the iPad, 3 years later, sold 40 million units. So you can see, and if you think about what the next evolution of the next devices are that are being introduced into the market, you see the speed that's happening. And I'm not just showing this to have a big number, but this has a very profound impact on how we look at developing services, for example, for these devices. Because when in the past we're all pretty comfortable, running through waterfall processes, we did a lot of research, and then we wrote a lot of PowerPoint decks, and we developed some use cases around it and business requirements, and we built something. And 1.5 years later, we were actually able to put something in market. By that time, the next device is already out there, and our research is outdated. So we have to adopt that from a processual perspective of how we go about in developing services and content for these. And then again, mobile takes many shapes, all the way from the feature phone to all kinds of sizes of the smartphones and the phablets and the tablets, and then we have different sizes of the tablets these days. These are all devices that were introduced into the market within the last 6 months. None of them was there before. Before that, we just had the tablet from Apple, as well as the iPhone, or the standard size smartphones. What this does, though, and this is where it gets tricky when we say mobile, and as much as I hate to look at it from a device perspective, sometimes you have to look at it from a device perspective. We're talking essentially about all of these, but we have to understand that use cases are very, very different. The way that I use the phone is very different from the way that I use a tablet. When I say, there's, for example, the headlines, you may know, was it Black Friday? No, Cyber Monday in the US is the day when the highest e-commerce per day is essentially achieved. So it's when every single e-commerce store that's out there in the web is throwing out massive rebates on products, and that's when everybody seems to buy. It's right after Thanksgiving, where you have Black Friday, where everybody goes into the physical retailers. What's happening is you read headlines where it says the e-commerce growth rate was 250-something%. Everybody is buying from mobile devices these days. Well, what everybody's buying from is from tablets. They're not buying from phones. And you can see that if you look at what the actual OS is. So what are people buying from? 98% are being bought from iOS. And then if you look into what the devices are, they're actually buying from tablets. So they're not. Mobile phones are not substituting desktops, but tablets are. And in that, they actually don't necessarily showcase a new behavior because people are still sitting at home. They're still doing research around how they want to buy and what they want to buy. It's not that all of a sudden people in the streets are crazy buying stuff with their phones as they're walking around. So we have to be very careful when we look at mobile behavior and what devices they're doing this and how they're perceiving it. And then yeah, we can talk about tablets being, on your bedside, or tablets being at your home, and you use it as a second device, doing research. But they're not just for couch surfers. If you look at these numbers, 92% of Fortune 500 companies are deploying or testing the iPad. So iPads are becoming an enterprise solution all of a sudden, as opposed to, for example, or in competition to a desktop computer or in competition to a notebook computer. 47% of business stakeholders surveyed seen demand for Salesforce automation application on tablets. So mobile devices are becoming an essential part of an enterprise infrastructure. Here's another stat that showcases the same thing. In 2010, 16.1 million tablets were shipped. That's a nice number. The red dots in these here is the share bought by businesses out of all of these. So the black ones are what consumers are buying for the personal use. The red ones are what enterprises are doing. If we look at 2015, where an estimation of 147 million tablets are being expected to ship, 1/3 of those will be bought by enterprises for their employees. So you see how mobility becomes an aspect of enterprises and not just something that consumers are using. So essentially, and I was saying this, mobile has become a commodity among consumers, the ones in B2C markets, for customers, if you want to title it that way, in B2B markets, but also for employees within the company. So you see mobility essentially penetrating everything that we're doing and everything that we're seeing at any given point in time. So let's think about how can we frame this from a strategic perspective. And I'm going to give you 3 categories of how we feel is a pretty good way of doing this, or how looking at it. And within each category, I'm going to show you some examples of what we actually mean by those. So the first one is mobilizing marketing. And I'll talk to those in a second, what that means. The second one is mobilizing the enterprise. So this is how do I use mobile services within an enterprise context. The third one is mobilizing products and services. So how can I actually use mobile services in order to augment a product that I'm already, like for example, a physical product that I'm selling? How can I take a brand's value proposition, which may be intangible, but make it a tangible service through a mobile device or through a mobile service? So those are the 3 categories that I want to show you some stats and some examples. So let's start with mobilizing marketing. Mobilizing marketing is what we all think of as marketing, right? It's advertising, CRM and loyalty programs, promotional aspects, content marketing, search marketing. This list goes on forever. Everyone here is a marketer in this room, so you all know what these aspects are. How can mobile actually help from a marketing perspective? And what's important here is, I've been asked this before when our CEO wrote a speech, and he said, "Martin, what's different in mobile than is different from before?" I said, well, when digital marketing came about, 15 years ago, roughly, we started to build the first websites, like at least from a semi-professional perspective. What we did is we went to look at traditional advertising models, have an idea, write a script, shoot the TV spot or create that print ad, buy some media, throw it out there and disrupt whatever somebody was doing. And that worked for a while there wasn't any alternative. Now, we took that same model and we did the same thing in digital advertising. We had an idea, we created a screen, we built a website, we threw it out there, and then we created display ads and disrupted everybody who was surfing and actually reading something completely different in order to drag them to our website. We did the same thing with emails. We took emails and we shot them into in mailboxes where nobody actually wanted to see them. Now, what that does, or what it did at the time, what it's done now, is if you look at click-through rates of display advertising, or if you look at open rates for emails and where they are, somewhere down there, we essentially destroyed a channel by taking a traditional advertising model and putting it exactly on top of a completely new, interactive, engaging potential platform that we had at our hands. Now, the thing is, we should not be doing the same mistake as we're looking at mobile now. And I'm a little bit scared when I sometimes look at the mobile media market or the mobile advertising market, because the discussions are very much dominated by media buys. Now, how can I buy more in-app display? How can I buy more mobile site display in order to then drive people elsewhere? And the first stat kind of would say, well, you know what, there's a reason it actually works. If I look at mobile advertising and how it drives engagement rates, I can say these are essentially engagement rates with rich media ads that I see. So for example, I have an in-app ad, which you probably all have seen. The iAd is the most prominent example of those. I click on it, it expands, it doesn't even take me to any mobile site, but it essentially the whole content or the whole interaction scheme all lives within the ad. I have quite high engagement rates. And these may stay here, and if I look at the click-through rates of mobile ads at the moment, they're about 10 times as high as they are on display. So right now it's a pretty successful story. The question is, how will this stay? IBM has taken a different approach. It still is an ad buy, but here we can see how you can do a much more intelligent version of it. CIO Insight, all the IBMers in the room know what it is a magazine for CIOs and covers topics that CIOs cover. What we've done here is we've essentially bought a display ad within the CIO magazine on a mobile device, but instead of just pushing out a message and saying, click here and we'll get you to a microsite, which hopefully will be mobile optimized, we've actually integrated a tweet that has something directly to do with the content that you're seeing. And the tweet is actually coming from somebody from IBM. And if you click on it, you actually land on the Twitter profile from that IBMer, who you can see what else he has tweeted. So you create content in context, which is a much more intelligent inclusion than rather just dragging somebody elsewhere, which has nothing to do with it, and actually deliver the added value that I can now actually follow Jason McGee here from IBM and see what else he has to say in the context of what I was just reading. And then IBM's CMO study has just revealed it, it's probably a year old. The biggest challenge we as marketers face is data. Now, where do we look when we think of how can we use data? If I think about data in a mobile advertising context, I all of a sudden find startups that are really, really innovative. And I find startups that do things, and if I combine their services, I can be even more powerful. One of the guys, for example, is Local Response. Local Response is a startup that allows me, Local Response essentially scans public Twitter walls. And they scan public Twitter walls for check-ins. So where Foursquare was not able to monetize their service when somebody checked in and deliver something in context of the location where somebody was, Local Response is essentially scanning Twitter walls. A lot of people, when they check in on Foursquare, they then post to Twitter automatically because the accounts are synced. And they can then tweet at the people as they've checked in. And that can be an active check-in through Foursquare, or it can be an inactive check-in, for example, when somebody just says, hey, I'm at the Gap, which is not an active Foursquare check-in, but the semantics can still be read out by Local Response. And all of a sudden, I can target location with a very, very simple mechanic. Now, if I said take Local Response and I take a company like Spotlight. Spotlight is a company that essentially builds a cloud score over my customer database. So if I have a customer database, email addresses, I hand that over to Spotlight, all privacy concerns aside. They essentially give me back the social profile of my database, and they can give me the Twitter handles of my database. Now, if I know my Twitter handles, and I know my database, and I have a good segmentation on my database, in the sense that I know what my high-value customers are, I can essentially say, these Twitter handles, high-value customers, so if I find these Twitter handles checking in at a specific location I can essentially have a white list of customers I want to target and have 100% precision of my mobile location-optimized marketing. So you combine essentially two startup services with each other, and you generate a lot of intelligence. One other, PlaceIQ. I love the guys from PlaceIQ. I don't think they know what they have. PlaceIQ has gathered data for about 2 years. Do you know them? For about 2 years, they've been doing nothing but gathering data, and they've mapped all of the United States, and they've put squares up of 100 meter by 100 meter, and they can tell you at any given time during the day what type of a profile of person will be in that square. So they know from census data, for example, that the square around the Ogilvy building, for example, in New York City, from 10 o'clock in the morning to 12 o'clock on a Monday morning, white-collar workers, they give you the average income, which I can't tell you right now. They'll give you, how many kids do they have, what cars do they drive. All of this data is available, and they've essentially all pulled it together and said, at this point in time, you'll find this kind of audience within this square. So if I now, as an advertiser, want to say, here's a specific demographic that I want to target, I can do location-based targeting based on knowing where that demographic will be at what time during the day and what square they will be. Yes, I do need to know where they are, but that is why I have services like the Weather Channel app. Everybody who opens the Weather Channel app automatically sends out their location because I want to know what the weather is like where I am right now. So I have the location, and I know what demographic I have, and all of a sudden I have a media proposition. What's more interesting, though, is the data they have. That is actually the fun part. That is something that helps me strategically plan where my audiences are. This is where I can build journeys. Right now, the proposition, the commercial proposition, is the media buy that you can buy through PlaceIQ. That's where I think if these guys, were to look at the data that they actually have and open it up to companies that pursue some serious CRM opportunities, that is where the meat is. And then you find new platforms. I don't know if any of you have been trying to create outward-bound messaging or content distribution campaigns or platforms across countries or across operators. And you all run into a massive pain, because every time you want to go across country or across operator, you'll have to negotiate contract by contract by contract with every single operator. So what you find now is companies like Soli or like Jana that have pre-negotiated contracts. Soli, Jana, each one of those has about 250 contracts in place, which allow me to create a campaign. For example, if I'm a fast-moving consumer good producer, and I want to create a point-of-sale campaign where something is on the package, and I want to have a send in a short code to get XYZ back, ringtone or whatever it could be. You couldn't do that in the past. Just do it like this. Now, Soli allows me to go into a platform. There's an interface. I just add what I want to do, and I can run that out across 15 countries, for example. So you see these new models as well, and you also find operators trying to merge into the space where they try to create what they call interoperability. Although I have a feeling, just coming from the Mobile World Congress, that the operators are way behind of what these over-the-top services already can deliver. And then content is making a big play. Probably a lot of you are in the content marketing space, where you create white papers, where you create case studies, you try to optimize them for how people are using them. This is as much true as it used to be for desktop behavior, more so even for mobile, where already today 25% of all video views on YouTube come from mobile devices, which in essence are 1 billion video views that YouTube is recording just across mobile devices. And if you do your content marketing right, and if you optimize your content in the right way from a search behavior, so that people actually find the content the way they search, and not just the way that you perceive how your content should be searched, but you actually take Google data, for example, in order to optimize the content, you script the videos in a certain way, you can do that same thing for mobile. So you can optimize your content for a mobile device specifically, and for the search behavior, which is inherently different on a mobile device than it is, for example, on a desktop. And then, as a wrap up for the mobilizing marketing, this is a campaign that we've created for Carling Black Label. So it's a beer. It's in South Africa, and what this case study I think shows very well is what happens if you create real value, and if you integrate mobile very naturally into an overall value creation, into an overall content platform, rather than having it as a standalone platform.
South African men love two things: soccer and Carling Black Label. It's South Africa's biggest beer. And when soccer fans crack open a Carling Black Label and watch a game, chances are they're watching Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. They're South Africa's biggest soccer clubs. But Carling Black Label noticed that the fans were getting more and more frustrated with the coaches. The coaches were coming from foreign countries like Brazil and Serbia, and they weren't as connected with the local flavor of South African soccer. The fans believed they knew their soccer clubs better than the coaches. All South African fans needed was a chance to prove themselves. So Carling Black Label gave the power to South African fans by creating the Carling Black Label Cup. The fans could pick the players for their team. The fans could make a live substitution on the day of the game. For the first time in football history, the fans could literally be the coach. We launched the campaign in TV, press, radio, and online with Dutch coach Ruud Gullit. Soccer fans immediately began voting for the players they wanted in the team by using the unique code under the cap of their Carling Black Label. The only thing a fan needed to cast a vote and become a coach was the one thing South African fans already had: a cell phone. We designed and built a unique mobile platform that gave the fans a chance to vote for the players they wanted. We built a website where fans could see their teams and share it on Facebook and Twitter. After 7 weeks of intense voting, the teams were announced, as selected by South African fans. The campaign ignited fierce debate in the media between fans, purists, players, and journalists. Even the coaches got involved. one thing wasn't up for debate.
So now it goes into how successful the campaign was, obviously. That's the typical case entry movies for Cannes. It actually did win a couple of Lions. But I think you got the essence of what, how you can essentially say the value that we're creating is your emotional participation in the game, and the phone is just a very natural vehicle for the people that they're already using. And I think what was important for us to prove that you can do this. It doesn't have to be a smartphone device. It doesn't have to be a mobile site. It can be very simple text in with the code mechanics that will allow essentially anybody in South Africa to participate in the campaign. So the second aspect of how do we use mobile, how can we look at it strategically, mobilizing the enterprise. And this is obviously a huge topic, and it's a topic where we as Ogilvy have so much meat in the game. IBM has a lot more solutions in that place, specifically when it comes to anything which is not marketing or sales specific. So when we talk about mobilizing the enterprise, we look at it more from a marketing or sales perspective, and how can we use mobile services in this space, which is anything from sales enablement, which is probably one of the hottest topics right now in that perspective, and I'm going to have a couple of examples. Effectiveness tools to help me sell my products better, process surveillance, internal communications, all kinds of ways of how mobile can optimize the way that we work. And just to show you that this is not just a food, the App Store is not just for Angry Birds. From 2011 to 2012, this is a year-over-year from 11 to 12. The fastest growing section in the App Store was actually the B2B section of the Apple Store. So this grew by 186% in terms of the apps that were introduced into that specific section. So you see there's a massive interest, and what you can also see is that over 70% of the executives under 40 use B2B apps. So it's a very, very common behavior to use apps now, specifically in this context, for enterprise-type solutions. And the Yankee Group conducted a study in 2011 where they looked across organizations that have large sales force in market, that actually depend on the sales force to sell their products. And what they found, if they have proper tools on their mobile devices that they can use in order to, either create a better sales conversation environment, or in order to have better access to data, in order to have live access to data, in order to be more informed about the customer they're about to visit next by integrating the sales enablement tool into the CRM program, you see they decreased sales cycle 23%, decreased admin time 24%, increased win rates 26%. These are pretty high numbers for creating efficiency and effectiveness in your sales conversions. And if you look at what industries are actually leading this pace right now in adopting mobile services specifically for the sales force, you'll find foremost regulated industries, pharmaceutical industries, and financial industries. So the ones that have pretty high burdens when it comes to regulatory content, that have to adhere to certain aspects, because the pharmaceutical industries, essentially, they're selling into home care physicians, for example. So they're salespeople, sales representatives. They go into the doctor's office. That is where they sell their medication. And they need to have a favorable environment there. But they also need to make sure that everything they say, because it's such a tough legal environment, is absolutely right. So they essentially depend on the fact that they can draw content from a live database, which is administered and overviewed at some other place. And so it's not up to the salesperson to make a mistake, because that information is essentially in the tablet or in the phone, whatever they're using within that conversation. And just to give you a couple of examples, I don't know if you guys from IBM here know the B case example. It may not be the prettiest user interface that we've created. It definitely was a test case. What B case is a sales enablement tools, and I don't exactly know for what part of IBM actually this is. But what it does, it essentially allows the sales representative to create a custom presentation when they go to a customer. And by custom presentation, we don't mean they have to draw every slide themselves. They essentially pick the slides they have from a whole, essentially, shopping basket of slides that are pre-ready made, and the sales representative is putting together his or her own story. So the sales rep knows who they're going to, they know where they've left off after the last conversation, they know what the specific need is that the customer may have, and then they can essentially pick and pull the kind of content that they need to for this specific conversation. The good thing is for IBM in the background is the information in the slides comes from a content management system. So the actual product manager who's not in the sales conversation can actually make sure that all the information is always up to date, that the sales representative is putting on the table when having this conversation. The next example is an example from Cisco, which is somewhat similar. This is an example that shows how Cisco admins can actually sell Cisco systems and use mobile technology for it.
Presenting the Cisco Small Business Solution Builder for iPad. Now Cisco partners have a dynamic sales tool to help grow their business. The app enables partners to quickly solve for customer business needs with Cisco solutions by taking customers on a logical visual journey. Partners can create custom designs from scratch or modify existing Cisco templates with only a few taps. Match a customer's needs with pre-configured and tested solutions. Browse a broad portfolio of Cisco products, compare features and benefits, and get real-time pricing and availability from distributors on Velocity SKUs using an integrated Fast Track 2 catalog. And retrieve saved solutions and customer information via email, enabling easy quote building back at the office. On top of all this, the app always stays current with regular updates from Cisco. Make the business case for Cisco solutions and products. Download the Cisco Small Business Solution Builder from the App Store for free.
I didn't know why for free was so important in this type of commercial, because it essentially is an enterprise enabling app, but it's interesting to see that for free still kind of draws, I guess, downloads, which I guess is for people that didn't really know what they're downloading there. And then the third example from a sales enablement perspective that I want to show you, and we can just essentially just run it. I'll talk to it because there's no sound over it. This is something that we've created for one of our farmer clients. And what you're seeing here is essentially an interface around the conversation for medication. What this does is, the typical sales conversation is, I'm the sales rep, I come into the room, I have my tablet, I used to have my notebook, now I have my tablet, I show you my tablet and I scroll you through the presentation that I've done, kind of like the B case example that we had before. What this does is, this essentially has the sales rep come into the room and hand the tablet over to the doctor and tell the doctor, you play around, this is the medication that we're talking to, but I don't know what your questions are. So you let me know what your questions are, and this is the way that you guide the conversation. So you create a favorable conversation or sales environment, essentially, by having the doctor, so the one who's being sold to, lead the conversation. And we've created, it's done now, a lot of like very simple interactive ways that play on, you know, the swiping, the drag and drop functions of the tablet. You can shake it. You can create random questions if the doctor isn't really sure of what he wants to ask, so you can just shake the tablet and a random question will pop up. So you use all of these very simple interface tricks in order to, you know, incite the doctor to then start the conversation and ask them the questions around the medication. And then last but not least, if we look at more of the process perspective, and this is where it gets into the space where it kind of moves away a little bit from sales and from marketing, but an interesting way of that I mean, these are two of many examples that you can now find, but these are two that we found very interesting. Is one is the Smart Devices Patch. This is a Korean insurance company that insures cars, and I know that you have apps here in the market now that where you don't even need an insurance agent anymore once you have an accident. I assume in Korea you still do. What they've done, the insurance company, is they've equipped their agents, the insurance agents, with apps that allows the insurance company to track wherever they are. What the insurance company does is they essentially overhear police radio, they overhear the call-ins, and they can dispatch the agent whichever is closest to the accident site to get there, take care of the claim or of the damage that's there, and a lot of times they're actually there even before the police has come to the accident site, and thus, you know, not having the necessity to call somebody, call into the call center then has to call a rep, the rep has to come all the way from across the city because that is the rep for that customer, but they already know this is the agent which is closest to the accident site, so we'll dispatch him right there. It's essentially like a taxi service if you hail a taxi from the street using one of those taxi apps. And then another one, Amtrak. This was a big revelation in the US, where sometimes companies are somewhat slow in adopting these services. Amtrak is now using iPhones, essentially, with a scanner that they've built into the iPhone, and they use that to scan the barcodes on the tickets. So instead of investing into hardware, which would have cost them millions and potentially, yeah, millions, I don't want to say billions, but millions at least, they've essentially just created a service on the iPhone that allows them now to scan the barcodes from the tickets and the trains, and thus work with their passengers. And then to close the session around the enterprise, mobilizing the enterprise office, and we just had this discussion upstairs in an interview. So who are the players? What is, you know, what's the view? Where's this moving towards? Because as I said, a lot of companies have, you know, developed their own solutions, and they've dabbled here and here and here, and some companies are very proud that they've already, you know, developed 50 apps for their people, but not really sure of how successful they are. And I think you have probably three layers, and anybody is free to prove me wrong on this, but you have companies like IBM and SAP. They own for the large companies, they own the backend systems. So they own the enterprise resource programs, for example. They own content management systems. They are moving upstream, essentially, moving towards the interface layer of where the mobile device really sits. Then in the middle, you have companies, the three big ones, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. Those three are all competing with their ecosystems around efficiency tools for creating collaboration. Google with the Gmail platform, very successful, selling that into companies. Apple, all we know, it has the iPhone. It's trying to desperately to create a collaborative layer on top of their Office products. And then Microsoft, obviously, which has a stronghold right now in their Office products and is also trying to make it more collaborative. All of them offer cloud services, which are obviously very, very, very important for this. So this is a layer where these three major players for now, and we're not talking about the open offices, for example, are playing, but these are the big ones. And then you have new players coming into the market that used to be startups, like Salesforce, which is now a massive organization, like Evernote, like Dropbox, which are essentially startups coming from the Valley area, developing services now that everybody loves and is using, where we still have to try to figure out how do these actually fit into compliances, into IT security schemes, and how do they work from a system perspective. So you have a very, very interesting landscape when it comes to mobilizing enterprise services and in terms of the players that we see here. So on to the last one, mobilizing products and services. Now, this is a short section, but I want to quickly talk about because this is personally my favorite section because I think there's a massive, massive potential in this area. What this really means is, how can I, as a company that, for example, sells physical products, think about how can I develop a mobile service that augments this physical product? Or how can I, as a company, take a brand value proposition and develop a mobile service from this brand value proposition? The best example, please all yawn, is Nike Fuel Band. What I find interesting is the story behind Nike Fuel Band and why it was developed. Nike said, we're not, what is Nike as a company? Nike is not a shoe manufacturer or a sneaker manufacturer. Nike is a company that helps you stay in shape, to get in shape. It's a company that entices sports and entices, active behavior and active lifestyle. And they just said, so what does that mean if that is my brand that I stand for? How can I develop services out of this without having to develop sneakers again and again and again and try to develop new sneaker technologies? There's some other examples out there where I can say, how did the brand actually take its inherent value proposition, which may be intangible, and create services, digital services from it? We have a couple of examples in here that talk to some others, but just a stat, this is just a very recent study that came out of why mobilizing products and services is so important. 56% globally agree that the mobile phone helps them complete their daily chores. This is a high number. This means people use their phone to help them with something in their daily life, to make things easier, to help them with shopping. This is not to read information. This is not to get more coupons while they're shopping at the aisle in supermarkets. This is really to help them with daily chores. And this is an area where typically in the past we have startups see innovation or innovate products for these daily chores, try to find niches where you can create a benefit for a need that was yet untapped. We also see a lot of startups creating services for where they thought there was a benefit and then there wasn't really one, or there wasn't a large enough uptake, or there wasn't a commercial model behind it. But generally there's a huge need for these services that help people in their daily lives. The first example is an example from Siemens, where Siemens has found a way of how they can use mobile technology in order to create incremental services around the products that they're selling.
The Siemens Industry Online Support app is available for Apple and Android devices. Access all the product information from Siemens Industry on the move, easy, fast, and uncomplicated, which is what you need to rapidly address your service needs. Now there's a new version of the free online support app. The essential new functions are scanning of product codes with immediate results, the optimized product view with all the technical details, sending of support requests. Of course, you can still manually enter order numbers and other keywords, but the scanning function can do it for you. Just hold the camera in front of the product code and then slowly move the camera away until the code is large and in focus. The code is then read automatically. As a result, you immediately see the product view page. Here you see all the available technical details of the product bundled on one page. This data can...
If you think about what this does is, I mean, this is the first step. You scan the product barcode and you know exactly what product it is. But what it doesn't do here yet, but where it will develop to is, I know what the product is. I know exactly when that product was shipped, but I also know who it was shipped to. I know the person exactly scanning it using my technology. I know exactly the problems they have with it, which all of a sudden allows me to transfer this knowledge about the product, if I overlay it with the customer data that I have already in my sales database, and create a lot more knowledge around that customer that I have. So this is an example of how you can take a mobile service or mobile technology and create additional services around a product that I'm selling. Now, we're not going to show the movie here because we're running a little bit low on time, but this is an example of how to take mobile essentially to the next level and create a monetization aspect out of it. Project Silverline is something that we've developed for Singtel, which is the largest mobile carrier in Singapore. And what they found in Singapore is Singapore has a rapidly aging population. They see about a third of the population soon will be over 65. And what they're also seeing is that this population is not using mobile devices so much, which for Singtel, as a carrier company, is a problem because they cannot monetize this population. So they turned that upside down and said, well, why don't we do a pro bono campaign out of this? And they found that a lot of the younger people in Singapore actually have 2 or 3 smartphones now, of which they're only using one, but they have like the 2nd or 3rd generation smartphone already lying in the drawers somewhere. So they've asked the younger generation people and said, why don't you donate your devices? People donate the devices. We refurbish them, so we polish them up, but more importantly, we actually deploy a new interface on top of the operating system that sits on top of it, an interface, an operating system, which is as easy to use as possibly can be. Because the reason why 65 years and older are not using the phones is because they're simply too complicated. And all of a sudden, I have a phone with an interface which is geared very specifically to this generation, which I can hand out, which has the typical emergency call button on it. It has very specific games. It has very specific content geared to this specific audience. And it does not have those endless settings in Android systems, for example, that I need. And you hand these out. We have a pro bono company that now essentially the foot soldiers, so to say, that walk door to door and hand out these phones. And obviously they come with minimal data plans, and all of a sudden Singtel has a way of monetizing this generation by rethinking the way that people are actually using phones and really looking into the insights of the behavior. So to close it off and hopefully make a little bit of sense out of all of this, what would we consider 5 success criteria as you embark onto a mobile strategy framework for the company? The first one is build a strategic framework with an agile mindset. There are 2 things in here. The one is, while the world talks about agile all the time, in my personal opinion, agile makes no sense if you don't have a strategic frame set and you don't know how certain rapid development processes are actually built into a larger business sense. So you always need to frame that sandbox in which you want to play, which needs to sit within a business context before you can then go ahead and say, all right, now let's prototype, now let's develop something fast, now let's test it in market rather than in focus groups and develop it, but do it please within the constraints of a strategic frame set, which has to be set for multiple years ahead. Be intelligent about context. We talked about context before in terms of the data that I can use around location-based context. But really being intelligent means not just location, not just time, but really knowing who these people are. And services that allow us to geofence locations and see what happens if I enter a geofence, if I exit a geofence, what does that do? It doesn't just necessarily mean I push out messages to a person that enters a geofence as in a supermarket. It means I can switch on and off functionality in my phone. Think about it this way. I enter my office building at Ogilvy, New York, and the phone recognizes that it's entering the office building because that's a geofence and automatically switches on the Wi-Fi settings for my office and switches those off as I leave the office again. So you can tell the geofences what they should be doing on your phone. Third, build experiences for people and not robots. A very common mistake, and we're all prone to do them, is to really understand what are people, how are they interacting with a device. A lot of times we encounter software interfaces that are simply not usable. The best example is the way we input hours. I don't know how guys you do it here. We have to input our hours into our system in order to figure out how many hours we're billable during a given week. The software is so basic and so bad, that we have a huge compliance issue. I argue if we put a nice user interface on top of it and make it tablet friendly, we can increase compliance with inputting hours by 100% just by doing it for user interface. I have these examples here. One is, you all seen Tesco in South Korea. They've developed a service where you could, in the subway, use the 5 minutes that you're waiting for the train. You walk by aisles and you take pictures of the QR codes in order to drop them into your shopping basket. And as you're getting home, it's coming. I realize it's been done here in Czech Republic as well. Procter & Gamble has done it. Toronto has it. A lot of markets have followed on top of it. And while the success is so and so, and one of the reasons is this picture was taken at 3 o'clock at night. It wasn't taken during rush hour, which you can imagine that during rush hour this is a distinctly different shopping experience. Yet the big insight in this was, had I just wanted to use the time that I'm waiting for a train in order to buy something, I could have just developed an app. And I wouldn't have to buy all of this media space here, which I can imagine was a pretty expensive media buy. What they found is the way people shop is they walk by aisles. And they understand that the expensive products on the top shelf and the less expensive products are on the bottom shelf. And they know meat, vegetables, dried fruit, pasta, and whatever comes next. So you replicate essentially a natural human behavior, and then you just augment it with mobile technology rather than disrupting it completely. And the other one is, we've done a large study around IBM C-Suite, and we've looked into how does a C-Suite use mobile technologies. And I think it's very, very important to really understand your audience and how they're using it, and develop, for example, methodologies like what's the typical start screen of your audience? What is on there? Try to find that out in order to understand how are they consuming content, what services are they using. Develop a partner strategy, just very quickly, because I think this is a much larger conversation, but there are so many services out there already, and whether that is services from existing large-scale players, or whether it is services from new startups coming from wherever startups are all coming from these days in the world, but they are there. You don't have to invent everything anew. Think of what you want to deliver, and then ask somebody or look around yourself. Are there platforms already out there that potentially deliver against what I'm doing before going in and writing business requirements all by yourself and delivering the service? Because that can potentially be a pretty heavy investment into a pretty null outcome. And then last but not least, last slide, make it simple. That is probably the most important one. And I said I'm going to come back to mobile payments at the very end. Do you know what M-Pesa is? M-Pesa is a mobile payment system in East Africa. It started in Kenya. It's backed by Safaricom, which is the carrier. I believe IBM builds the backend for M-Pesa. And it is very simple. I have a code. I can text to somebody with a code. The person accepts the text message. It's text messaging. And I transfer money from one person to another person. I can then go with my phone, go to one of many, many, many vendors in Kenya, and I can say, please deposit this into my account. And this is how I transact, by simple SMS services. If you compare this to the massively convoluted ecosystem of how we're trying to implement mobile payments in the Western world, this is showing of how simple can be simple and how it really works. 25% of the GDP in Kenya are now being transacted through M-Pesa. 25% of the GDP run through this mobile payment system in a very, very simple manner. So with that, I'm not going to show. This case is actually Ask Me Afterwards. That's also one of my favorites. But thank you.
So I guess we've seen that this whole mobile boom that we are experiencing is not only about Angry Birds, but there is much more behind that companies around the world can use and can leverage. And let's look at email causing heart diseases. How can we deal with it in a much better way, Luis?
Good morning, everyone. How are you? Good? Are you doing okay? Can you hear me okay in the back as well? I have a tendency to speak too fast because I get excited about these topics. So if I do and you don't understand me, raise your hand and say you're going too quick, and I will stop and slow down and start talking and making more sense. Yeah. What I'm going to do is this is a video, right? Before we go into the video, can I just load a website, perhaps? Something that runs on the background. Okay, and then just gonna go here. Where's the? I'm sorry. EU, and then where's the /? There you are. Yeah, show that for a second until I go further on. So, as I was introduced earlier on, I work for IBM. I've been in the company now for 16 years. I started working in IBM Netherlands. I'm now, 4 years ago, I moved to IBM Spain. And I work in the company as a social computing evangelist, or as a social business evangelist. And my job is to actually disrupt people, make their lives uncomfortable. Why? Because we have been too comfortable for too long. Yeah? And you're going to wonder, like, what? Excuse me, what job do you have? Yeah, my job is to actually help people wake up into the new reality of what it is living in social networks from a business perspective. Because I know that probably when I tell people about social networks, most of you may be thinking about pictures in Facebook of what you did last night. I'm not interested. I'm interested on how can I collaborate better with you and make myself more effective, right? So 5 years ago, I decided to create a bit of trouble, and I went to my company, an email-driven company, like probably most of yours, and I was telling them from now onwards, I'm not going to use email for work. And then people told me, really? Good luck with that. So what I want to do is I want to share a little bit of that experience, what it means in a business context to actually rely for the vast majority of interactions on everything but email. And I know that you're all thinking, no, that's not possible. So I'm going to ask you, would you be able to stop using email today? I hear all of this. I can't hear anything. So tell me, would you be able to stop using email today? No? Why not? Probably? Okay. That's a good one. So what are the reasons? What is it that is stopping you guys from not dropping email today? Your boss would not be really happy about it. You see, this is when I like to do these sessions very interactive, right? So that what you just said there implies to me that your boss wants to use perhaps more power than he or she is supposed to, right? Controlling information. That's what it's all about. Email is about controlling information, right? And why do I say controlling information? Because controlling information means controlling power. Have you guys heard about knowledge is power? It's a very popular thing in southern Spain, southern Europe, which includes Spain where I come from, right? What does it mean? It means that people feel that knowledge is power. So if I share my knowledge, I share my power, right? Or they go and say that they only share their knowledge with you because you need to know. So if you don't ask, you won't get, right? So one of the things that I'm trying to do with this particular movement of not using email for 5 years now is how do I disrupt that model of thinking? And I thought, well, the best way of me for doing that is to stop using email, right? So this is a website which was actually put together by the Ogilvy folks in the Netherlands. Remember, I live in Spain. I work in Spain. This was done by the Netherlands, right? Where one time, around October 2011, they approached me and they said, we would love you to become our public campaign in the Netherlands for social business, and we would love you to be our public avatar on social business representing IBM and stuff. Would you like to do it? I thought, like, of course. Who wouldn't, right? Public avatar, you know, fame, popularity, and everything else. Who's not going to like that? Now, little did I know that that particular move was actually going to change my life as an individual. Now, before that video and this webpage was put together, I was already not using email for around 3.5 years. So this is 1.5 years ago, right? And this particular campaign in the Netherlands, it was only meant for the Netherlands. But it's been so successful that it's now the pan-European IBM Collaboration Solutions social business campaign across Europe. There are websites in Spanish, in Portuguese, in Italian, in German, both Swiss and German itself, in Dutch, which was the original one, right? And that's all been translated, right? Now, what is the key message from doing that? Is that 5 years ago, it was just me, the only person who did it. And I have got thousands of people doing the same thing, living without email. So when I ask you, will you be able to live without email? The first thing is I don't want you to think that you will be alone. There's plenty of us doing it, right? Now, when I get introduced and invited into public speaking spaces, most people tell me that I am the guy who killed email. I wish I could, but I haven't, right? And I actually don't want to kill email. Email itself is a good tool. It's perhaps the most powerful communication tool that we have. What I do want to do, though, is I want to propose repurposing how we use email. In my experience, working in a corporate world, I think we have killed each other's productivity abusing email. Why do I say that? Well, you will see that in a few minutes. Yeah. First, what I want to do is I want to show you a video, the video that they shot in the Netherlands, about what it is that I'm actually doing with this no email thing. Because plenty of people feel that I want to kill email, but it's actually bigger than that. It's way, way bigger than that. It's a new way of working, right? So if we can have the video now, it plays for around 4 minutes. It's in English with English subtitles, so you will be okay with it. And it describes, like I said, what is the corporate reality of the knowledge worker today with social networking tools. So go ahead.
I'm always on the move. But one of the things that I always do is check what my social networks are doing, see whether I can help, see where I can share my knowledge, see whether I can create knowledge. And then from there onwards, what I do is I check my diary to see where I have to go. I work for IBM Madrid, my boss is in the US, I live and work in Gran Canaria, and I don't use email.
It's a dream job right there, isn't it?
It was nearly 4 years ago, right? I was coming back to the office and I found myself with like several hundred emails in my inbox. I thought, like, I'm sorry, this is not a way of productivity. I need to kill this. I need to stop that. So what I did was I basically dumped email. Easy.
Very.
I wanted to find a way to become more productive again. The idea was to realize that I needed to regain back my productivity by using more collaborative tools. I created a blog post where I told everyone in the company and outside that I was going to stop using email. And instead, I was going to use social software tools, right? My colleagues were shocked. They were telling me, how are you going to do that? That you're crazy. We are an email-driven company. You're not going to survive. We're going to give you like 2 weeks. Well, I've been doing it for 3.5 years, and I'm still there. And I'm doing it every day. What it's meant for me, it's meant a new way of working, where I become a lot more collaborative, a lot more open, and more importantly, I share a lot more of my knowledge. I'm no longer the bottleneck. What I have decided to do was to design a new way of working for me and my colleagues. So what I do is I spend a lot of time sharing and educating them and coach them on how they too can move away from their inboxes. So this not just benefits the individual, it benefits the groups, the networks, and overall the company itself. Why? Because they will be able to keep people. When I started doing this, I started getting like 30 to 40 emails per day. Now I'm just getting 16 per week. I was closed, private, with power struggles, into more open, transparent, and engaged tools, social networking tools. I become a lot more helpful to other people because I'm no longer just working on 1 or 2 individuals' work. I'm actually helping out the social networks become better at what they do already. With your email, right, you no longer have the control. You always depend on other people. In social networks, you control the flow. You control who you network with, who you share knowledge with, and who you collaborate with. As the liberating movement from breaking out from the inbox is thinking outside of the inbox, realizing that to become more innovative, to find out new way of working, you need to encourage open collaboration, open knowledge sharing, something that email wasn't providing. So what I did was basically break the chain. The main shift for corporations is that for the first time they're realizing they have got a huge amount of hidden talent behind the firewall. The people. I'm much more powerful myself with my networks than with my inbox. Email will survive. It will still be there. There are good use cases for it. What we're going to see is we're going to see how it's going to transition from being a content repository to being a messaging and notification system. The future of work is going to be more distributed. You know, work is going to get done around social networks and communities, and we're going to have less hierarchy and more hierarchy. For the first time in 15 years, I now own the work that I do. As a story.
It's not such a bad story, is it? Fine. Can you go back to the website perhaps and show it on the background? So a few things from that video. Do you guys not recognize the place where it was shot, right? That's my home place. That's where my home office is. That's Gran Canaria, right? The corporate reality of the 21st century is that I live in Africa. I report to my boss in Madrid. I'm a project manager in the States. I no longer understand work as a physical place. Work to me is a mental state. Work happens wherever I am, right? Right now, we have got the opportunity to have all of these. Martin was talking about all of the various different mobile solutions and mobile tools. We have got the internet connections and everything else. Obviously, some countries than others have got more penetration, but it still is there, right? So that allows me to challenge our notion of work. It's no longer something that I do 9 to 5. To me, work happens when I need to get work done. Work is a verb. It's not a nice, lovely building like the ones that you guys have got here in Prague, right? It's much more than that. What's happening there is that it's helping me challenge how people work. It's helping me understand that what matters to my boss is not how wonderful I look like by every time that I go to the office, is actually what I deliver at the end of the day. It's results, it's deliverables. That's what my boss cares about. She doesn't care that I work and live 6,000 kilometers away from her. She just doesn't care, right? This is what I do through social networks. I mean, plenty of people keep asking me questions. Will you be able to live your lifestyle of living in Gran Canaria with just email? What do you guys think? No, of course not. Why? Because there's no visibility. On email, I can hide. I can pretend to be someone else. I can even push work away from me. I can use email as a delegation machine. That's how we use it today, right? I can dump my work into someone else. Hey, could you help me do this, please? No. Actually, what you mean is, can you do this for me? And then I'll get the credit. Come on, what's wrong with that? Everything is wrong with that, right? One of the interesting things that happens when I started this movement of no email is that it helped me challenge how people work today. I got them to go on to political power struggles of the lovely carbon copy and the blind carbon copy, where you basically just cover your ass in front of your boss saying, no, hang on, look, it's here. It's in my email. I did it. Going from that mentality into one where openness and transparency rules, right? Now, obviously, if you become a lot more visible in what you do, and then people get to see what you do in your day-to-day, you're giving people the opportunity to trust you more. We don't trust enough people using email, which is why we keep justifying everything through email, right? Now, if I go into social networks, people will go and tell me, what is it that you do? And I'll go and I share it very nicely and very openly. Why? Because I know that I can benefit from what other people learn from me. Right? Now, the interesting thing here, remember what I mentioned earlier on. I'm trying to find that knowledge power mentality, that knowledge is power mentality. And my mantra actually is knowledge shared is power. Is the more I share, the more powerful I become. Why? Because the more people will know me, the more visibility I will have. Right? So to give you some snippets here as well, some glimpses. In the company inside of IBM, we did a study around 8-9 years ago, where we queried people how long it would take them to find an expert. How long do you think was the average? 6 months to find an expert? Oof, no, little less than that. That would have been, like, we're in deep trouble if we cannot find an expert in 6 months. In the company, I'm talking about 480,000 people, yeah, which is a large corporation, so it's just not like worldwide, so this is just in the company itself. The average was actually 1 week, which, if you think about it, if you ask me a question, that means that I can only get back to you in 1 week time. So what is going to happen? That I lose you as a customer. You cannot wait for me for 1 week, right? Now, with social networks, I'm actually challenging people now, and I tell them that through my social networks, remember the video, I'm much more powerful with my social networks. I can find you any expert in the company in less than 5 minutes. I have done that for 5 years. I haven't failed yet. And this is more the important thing here is that it's not just my networks, it's my networks. Is the second, third, fourth, fifth degree, sixth degree of separation, right? Where if I don't know, I ask my networks will ask their networks, and before we know it, we have reached the entire company. Yeah? And this is a large business, so imagine a small, medium business, for instance. Why do social networks have got such a huge impact? Because we free information. We no longer trap it in silos. The information flows in networks. People share ideas in networks. They get to collaborate in those particular networks, right? So one of the things that I started with this movement was to design a new way of working, where we no longer fight each other, we help each other. You will go like, yeah, that sounds like common sense. It is. But look into your own companies and tell me, how many times do you have to fight to get something done in your company? I bet it more than once, right? So here's what happens. When you challenge the status quo by going into something so pervasive as email is, what you're doing is you're getting people uncomfortable, which is what I'm mentioning along that my job is to make people uncomfortable. Because what I do is I actually get them and force them to think before they send an email. And what I do is I force them to think from this particular point of view. Is there a better way for me to share this piece of information, right? And I know that you guys are going to tell me, yeah, but I don't have the time to think about this, because if someone sends me an email and I know the answer, my initial reaction is to go and respond back. And the quicker that I can do it, the faster I can get rid of my email and we'll go into inbox zero or whatever else. That's not going to happen. Inbox zero is a myth. Whoever told you that they do inbox zero every day, they're lying through their nose. Why? Because you will always keep getting more email. The only reason why you would go into inbox zero is if you stop using email altogether, which is essentially what I do myself. And even then, I still get emails from people who do not know me yet, people who want to have private, confidential, one-on-one exchanges, which I still do through email, or whatever else, right? That's why I mentioned earlier on that email will always be there. There are use cases for it, right? What happens is that we're going to go from 100% of the use cases to 3 use cases, which is what I use now, right? So the impact of social networking there is that I no longer use it just for fun, like the Facebook pictures or whatever else. I also use it for work. So the vast majority of my interactions have moved into our internal connections platform, right, which is what we use for work, but also into Twitter, into Google+, into SlideShare, into LinkedIn, whatever the actual context is. And I know you're thinking, like, hang on for a second. My inbox, it was just one space, one box. And are you checking 4 or 5 different boxes? I said, no, I don't check boxes. I check into people. My work is in people's brains right now. One of the things that happens in knowledge networks, in social networks, is that as you start sharing your knowledge, it is no longer your knowledge. It's everyone else's knowledge, right? So one of the things that has happened, which I define as the climax of moving away from your inbox, is when your own networks have conversations on your space without you. That's as good as it gets. I go through that every day. In fact, when I go traveling, people have conversations without me because they know that I'm traveling. And when I come back, I have got those lovely conversations of people interacting amongst themselves, asking questions, getting answers, sharing presentations, sharing files. And I go like, my God, like you guys have been busy. Now you may be wondering, okay, but that means that you still need to read all of that. No, I don't. Why? Because I trust my networks. And I go back and I ask them one key question. What happens if I've been gone? And they will tell me, well, nothing, go on. I just go and move on. Why? Because I put myself in the hands of my network. If my network tells me that I need to do work, they will tell me about it. If not, I just move on with it. I just incorporate myself back into the streams. Everything becomes a flow. Instead of thinking of lakes, which is what your inbox is, in some cases it's like an ocean, right? What happens there is that you move into that flow nature of how you're going to interact. And what I do is I just incorporate myself into that flow when I come back. Or I am the flow when I'm the one working, right? Now you may be wondering, okay, this all sounds like very cool, nice and dandy, but how would it work for me? Give me a couple of practical tips that I can go and challenge the status quo how I work, right? So let me ask you guys first, is any one of you who does not use any social platform today? Who does not have any social profile? None of you. Wow, I'm impressed. You know why I'm impressed? Because the first thing that people tell me is, yeah, but email is universal. Everyone has got a universal address. I say, yeah, social networks do. I just ask you, is anyone here without any social profile? And you all have a social profile. How fun is that, right? But here's the thing. Here's the thing. People who tell me that email is universal, I tell them, yeah, it's universal as long as I know your email address. Do I know your email address? No. I made your name because we have been introduced, and there's this lovely friend of mine called Google, where I can go and Google your name up, and it will bring me your entire social presence. Have I asked you about your email address? No, and I already have a way to interact with you, even between different companies. Email does not provide you that visibility, that openness, that transparency. Yet social networks do. And I only need 140 characters. If you guys have got a Twitter ID, I only need 140 characters to engage with you. A text message. I only need a text message, right? So look at how easy social networks are becoming as well. Because that's the other thing that people will tell you about email. Yeah, but email is so easy. Yeah, email is so easy for the sender, not for the receiver. Because the receiver needs to deal with your work, right? There needs to be negotiation in there. There needs to be collaboration going on. So I'm distracting you guys on purpose. So keep back on track, right? So tips. How can I challenge this at work, right? Two ways. There are two things that you can do, right? And I'm not saying that you should all go and stop using email today, but challenge it in your own companies to see how far you could go, right? Sometimes it clicks, sometimes it doesn't click. So I'm going to share two tips. Right? And these two tips, and we can certainly go and talk about them in the terms of questions and everything else. One of them is very tough. It's actually huge, difficult to get it sorted out. It's the one that will tell you how addictive you are to email yourself. Because we are addictive to email, yeah? Well, you guys are. I broke my addiction 5 years ago. But here's the number one tip. Right? The number one tip is stop responding through email. And you go like, duh. You came all the way from Spain to tell us that? Yes, but here's the thing. Would you be able to do that? Think about it. Would you be able to stop responding through email today? It's not as easy as you think it is. Especially when someone asks you a question through email and you know the answer. Your initial urge is like, oh my God, I know the answer, reply. Bang, next. That's your initial reaction. So my challenge to you is stop that reaction. Wait and think. Is this the best option to respond to this person's query? Because email, what you're doing is just basically telling that person that answer. But what happens when you have got the same question 50 other times by 50 other different people? Copy and paste. You will tell me, yeah, but copy and paste every day, every action, at the end of the day is a couple of hours of doing copy and paste. We can do a lot more things than copy and paste, right? So you see, you tell me, okay, so that means that I should not respond to people? I say, no, watch my lips. I'm saying do not respond through email. Respond through other means, in this case, social networking tools, right? So how do I do it from a practical point of view? So someone would typically send me an email asking me a question, typically, right? Or asking me information or whatever. So what I would do is I would just go and ask that person, or better said, I should rephrase that. I actually go and look at their email. And have you noticed how on all of the email systems, we have got what they call the closing information signature, right? Like your signature. Have you noticed how the vast majority of people tell you where they hang out in social networks? That was their blog address, their Facebook page, their LinkedIn page, their Twitter ID, and everything else. So I just basically go where they are. They already tell me what is the social presence. They already tell me what is the question. So instead of responding through email, what I do is I just go through the social network and say, hey, thanks very much for the email. Here's the answer to your question. Now, if you do that in a social platform, whatever it is, one of the things that you're doing there without not realizing is that you're telling that person what the answer is, but you're telling your networks and their networks what the answer is. So automatically you amplify the sharing of the experience. So it's no longer those pair of eyes who see it, it's your entire networks. Now to give you an example, inside of IBM, my network is 3,000 people, 3,100. So every time that I respond to someone, there are 3,100 people who know that answer. And then obviously I have to add their networks. And as soon as there is a third party participating, there is also their network. So before we know it, we have got an orgy of networks exchanging ideas and information with one single interaction, right? So that's tip number one. If you can resist not responding through email for 1 week, you'll be off it forever. I can guarantee you that. But I also know the tingling of the fingers when you go like, oh no, I know this, I need to respond back. Yeah. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, and I finish off with that, and then we go on to the term questions, is study how you work. Try to find out what kind of an emailer you are. Try to find out how do you use email today. Build use cases. Right? So what do I mean with that? Well, trying to find out if you're the person who shares project status reports, if you're the person who asks questions, if you're the person who answers those questions, if you're the person who shares bulletin boards or newsletters, or you share news or announcements, or you share files, or you share pictures. Trying to find out how are your own habits of using email. Get a list of those. Probably it's 10, 15 interactions. I actually have got a presentation that I do internally where I have got 50 email different types of use cases, 50, right? But probably you will come up with 10 or 15. So I want you to go on a piece of paper, and I want you to write down on a first column, the left column, write down there each of those email use cases, right? Then in the middle column, pick up the one single social component from your social platform that you will be able to carry out that same interaction. So for instance, sharing files. Instead of sharing them through email, you may have SharePoint, you may have Yammer, you may have Drive, you may have Connections, you may have Dropbox. So share the file there. So that's the interaction. Notice how you don't focus on the rundown of the features and the capabilities. You focus on the task and the activity at hand. That's the focus. That you only focus on the task, right? And that's what you do in the middle column. And then on the third column, the last column, what you do there is you describe in your own words what is your immediate personal business benefit. So what do you get out of moving that interaction? Right? What do you get? Not the organization, not your team, not your community, you as the individual. So I'm going to give you an example of how I do it. So when I used to rely on email quite a bit, one of the use cases that I had was sharing files. Now inside of our company, we have got that lovely capability of capping and blocking emails inboxes after they have gotten too much email. We have exceeded the mail quota, right? We call it our mail jail. So we're in jail with our mail, so we can no longer respond. So I used to run into that every week. And that forced me to spend 2-3 hours every week to clean up my inbox, to do housekeeping, to archive files, to back up my archives, to actually do all of those tasks that we love doing every Friday afternoon. Yeah? Now, what happened was I said, okay, that's one use case that I can move forward. So I stopped sharing files through email, and I talked to my people to stop sending me files through email, and instead move them into social file sharing spaces. The immediate benefit, my immediate personal benefit, was that for the last 5 years, every week I have saved 2 to 3 hours to do something more productive, like talk to customers. Now multiply that by 480,000 employees doing the same thing. You want to look for return on investment of social? That's one use case of the many. Yeah? And you're going to tell me, yeah, but, and I finish with this, I'm willing to try this out. I said, great, I can help you, all support that I can give you. But I also understand that if I want to move away from my inbox, I also need to get my people away from my inbox. What's the point if I don't use email, but they keep using email? That's the whole point. You yourselves become evangelists, like I am, and you actually convert people to live your way. And you're going to tell me, yeah, but I don't have the time to educate other people, right? And I will tell you, how about 5 minutes? That's all you need, 5 minutes. 5 minutes of education. And they said, what do you mean with 5 minutes? I said, yeah, 5 minutes. Remember, the focus is the task, how to move it into that particular social component, and describing the benefit. Right? So if you guys are already familiar with SharePoint or Jive or Yammer or Connections or whatever, moving a file is very easy. Uploading a file is very easy. You go and click on upload a file, select the file, add tags, add description, click on upload, and that's it. That's going to take you less than 5 minutes to show. That's what you need to do. Lots of chunks of 5-minute educations. Now, once obviously you go through the number of those 5-minute education chunks, there's a time when you will stop and you no longer have to do it because everyone knows how to do it. And that's when you can get work done. That's when your evangelist role will fade away, right? And here's the big key thing, and that is that no one can deny you 5 minutes. No one. Because it's only 5 minutes. And if you have got the opportunity of being co-located on the same building, offer them a coffee. You pay the coffee, you show them in 5 minutes. No one is going to deny 5 minutes you paying the coffee, right? And that you're going to have coffee anyway. So why not do it with those people in 5 minutes? When they go out and when they finish off and you have done that 5-minute education and they go back to their own offices, computers or whatever, and they see how easy it is, they will want to ask you, okay, let's do another use case, and another use case, and another use case. And before you know it, in 5 weeks, those 2 tips, in 5 weeks, and I'm very serious with this, you will reduce 80% of your current email volume. 80. And if not, I'll come back to Prague and buy your dinner. You may be kidding, you may think it's a joke. I actually have got that challenge with people who take those 2 tips, and they have all reduced it by 80%. I haven't paid a single dinner yet. But it's 2 tips. The moment that you respond to 1 email, I win. It's tough, but the reward, 5 weeks, 80% less email. So take the challenge, yeah? Well, that was it, what I had. Something that we can go now for the term of questions and that you may have. One of the things that I want to do, like I said before, is I don't want you to walk away and say that you're going to stop using email now. But think how I started the session. Do you need to challenge how you work today? Do you need to make people uncomfortable to look for new ways of working? And if you do, can you use email as that weapon to go for? I did it. And what it has meant for me is that 5 years later, I have got a dream job where I work and live in Gran Canaria. My boss is in Madrid and my project manager is 6,000 kilometers away from me. And she knows exactly what I do every day. Openness and transparency. Yeah? Thank you.
So, thank you very much, Luis, for spring email detox advice.
Okay.
And now it's time for your questions, both our speakers. So, please, who has a question? Mm-hmm.
Hi, Thomas. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right. Mm-hmm. Well,
so very
go
quick
ahead.
repeat, because we have a YouTube people watching around the world.
Okay.
So the question was regarding Yammer and the resistance within Telefonica into adoption this social collaboration tool.
Okay. The problem with Yammer is that it entices people to make use of the application for free, so you get traction, and as soon as you want to protect data, especially when employees leave the network, you have to pay for it. Unfortunately, that's a wrong example of doing business. I would not want to put my company proprietary information on a network that I cannot control. And not control from the perspective of me as the individual, but me as a business, right? So I would challenge that model of working. So Yammer, for instance, is good and interesting for chit-chat conversations. If you want to make a heavy investment on it, you need to be aware that the information resides on their servers, not on your servers. Right, so I'll give you an example, and this may not be the right example. You guys will get the idea. Google killing Google Reader. How many thousands, if not millions, of people had thousands of links and interesting articles that they have been accumulating over the course of years from blogs that they have read that they can search in a snapshot? Google is going to kill that on July 1st. Good luck with that. That's what I keep telling people. So the move into social networks, especially those so-called free social networks, is not to think how you're going to reduce the barrier of entry. Is, do I know where the data is going? Do I own the data? Can I retrieve it at any given point in time? If the answers to those questions is all negative, you may need to look somewhere else. Yeah, that's an example.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
So next question. I know.
Okay, hi. Yeah? Yeah?
So the question was about vacation and the office work, and was on Luis again.
Okay. I actually work from home. I have got a home office, which is basically a bedroom, right? I changed it into my home office. My closest IBM location is in Seville, which is 1,300 kilometers. So I don't go to the office very often. I will have to swim every day, right? I do go on vacation as much as I possibly can. I just came back, for instance, at the beginning of the year after a full month of vacation. I don't work on vacation. Vacation is vacation, right? And I know that people will go and say, yeah, but you will come back, you have got these hundreds, if not thousands of emails. And I say, that's the point why I do take my vacation, because I need to disconnect, right? So in the context of what happens when I come back from vacation is, I'll give you an example. This last vacation, I usually take my vacation around Christmas, right? Because while the rest of Europe is freezing to death, I'm on the beach, right? Remember where I live. So what happens then is that this year I decided to take 4 weeks of vacation. I had a bunch of days off still left, and I thought, well, I must go and take them all, right? So I went into my social network inside of the company, and I said, folks, I'm going on vacation for 1 month. Look after me. I'll see you when I get back. That look after me is critical. It's trust that you have built with people over time. So I went a whole month on vacation. I didn't check any of the networks. I didn't check whatever emails that people may have sent to me or whatever. I came back to work the first day, and I said back, hey, hi, everyone. I had a wonderful vacation. I'm back. What have I missed, right? Now, of the 3,100 people that are on my network, only one responded and said, this is a hot topic. This is a hot topic. You may want to go and tap into that. You may. Not that you have to. You may. For the rest, move on. That's exactly what I did. 3 months later, I still have to see any interaction that happened on that month that I was away that needed to come back to me. The transition that I mentioned between static work and flow work. I just move with the flow. Let me ask you guys, when you go on vacations for 3 weeks, what happens after you come back? Or what happens while you're gone? Does the company stop? Do your colleagues stop working? Sorry, what, someone said that, something on the back? Yeah? Right. Yeah. Right. Right. Great. And I tell you what, I would love to invite you for a coffee because you have done there 5 minutes of education in 2 minutes. What have you done is you have told people that work moves on even when you're not there. But here's the beauty of it. The beauty of it is that we are not as indispensable as we think we are to our own colleagues, because if I'm gone and if I send an email or someone sends me an email with a question, I'm going to wait for you to come back. I'm going to go to right next door colleague who's going to help me with your query. And yet I'm the one that's stuck with my email. So I love that you shared a very good practical tip in there, which is when you guys come back from vacation, create a separate folder, move all of the emails there, and don't look into them. And I can guarantee you that of the 1,500 that you may receive, 1 or 2 you will need to pay attention to, and the rest you can then throw to the trash, right? How did I learn that? From executives. I had a CEO in France who said to me, every time that I go away, I have like 1,500 emails. You know what I do? I select them all and I delete them. This is the CEO of a company. And the business still runs. Yeah? Yeah. Yeah, exactly. But the interesting thing there is that you're already looking for a use case, which is when I come back from holidays, no email. I'm not going to even look into them, right? The next stage is figuring out what other kinds of interactions and start moving one interaction away. So my key message here is work will continue. Whether you're there or not, it will move on, with or without you. So we're not as important as we think we are. And I know that you're going to all say, yeah, come on, I'm very important. I say you are. To your networks, to the people who you trust the most. They will be your work. That's what you need to focus on. The business will go on. Just let business do business. You just need to focus on the people that you work with the closest, your networks. That's your new way of working from that perspective. So thank you for that experience. That was wonderful. Thanks.
Okay.
Yep. Do I have some crystal ball? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Okay. Right. We'll accept the challenge. You want to repeat that for the YouTube?
The question was regarding the responsibility sharing and also some tipping points. So what would happen if everyone would move out of inbox? What would happen with the responsibility in companies?
At the very beginning of the presentation, I mentioned how information is power, how knowledge is power. The reason why managers and executives have got their position is because they retain that information and they retain that power, right? What do I mean with that? If you actually start trusting more your people and you give them more information, they will make better decisions, right? That eventually is going to reflect in the fact that you're giving them a lot more freedom and a lot more autonomy. So they will go on. Remember when I mentioned that for the first time in 15 years, now obviously 16 years, I own my work? That's what it is. I own it. It's not my manager telling me what I need to do. Or, command and control saying, hey, we have to do this job. You're going to do that job because I made that decision for you. So in the whole sphere we're moving into social networks, what's going to happen is that managing and they become leaders. They become servant leaders, as they call them, which is how can I serve you today as my employee to be better or be more awesome at what you do? For the last 50 years, we have been having this culture of nailing down the workforce because it's weak, because we have got weaknesses, right? What social networks are doing is helping us identify that we live and thrive on the strengths. So the role of the manager from that perspective is, how can I share more information from what I know to help you become bigger and stronger at what you are? Flow, right? Now, one of the things that I'm sure that you're thinking now is, what do I do with middle managers? You give them a choice. You'd rather be part of the movement, or we get rid of you. And we get rid of you is not you getting rid of them, is the networks themselves reproducing their knowledge to the point where they're no longer indispensable, right? When I mentioned be part of the movement, be part of that flow. So, okay, so the future state is that work will get done through networks and communities, not top-down driven like it is happening today. And what is the beautiful thing of doing that? Knowledge flows. It is no longer stagnating. People will have an opportunity to make better decisions with information they get provided. There was, and Martin mentioned this on one of the CEO studies that IBM did. The one from this year, no, but the one 2 years ago, it was mentioning how 45% of the CEOs of today made the wrong decision every day because they don't have enough information. We need to fix that. That basically means that 1 out of 2 decisions, they're wrong. They shouldn't. And the reason for that is because we don't share enough information openly. That's the problem. Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question on both of you guys, actually. Both topics are connected to speed of innovation. It's quite rapid.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you, from both of your perspectives, see when to make the right decision when it comes to the investments? Not only financial investment, but also some sort of mental commitment. We see in mobile industry companies that were giants a couple years ago are now nearly broke. There are many platforms within the social collaboration area. So how do I pick the right one?
You go first. I've talked already enough. Come on.
I feel like I'm a VC here who's asked, like, what investment am I going to take? And I just remember some of the blog posts I just read lately of how VCs go at it. I think it's you're right. The speed of innovation is quite rapid, and there's a theoretical question of whether that can continue to increase over time, or whether at some point our human brain is just stopped by it. But in terms of I think the company will survive that are constantly testing what they are producing in market. And there's no problem with producing something which fails in market as long as I make the right decision at that point in time and stop it. And as long as I know that I've tested it in market and not tested it necessarily within focus groups. And I was making this point earlier that we've come to a point where there simply is no time for long and arduous research where people tell me what they want, but what they actually mean is something completely different. So I think as long as you're able to roll things out, test them in market, and make the right decision, the make or break decision after that initial test, and companies that have that as a mentality, they will survive.
I'm going to go back in history. Thomas Edison said once that when he invented the bulb, he actually had to try 2,000 times to fail first. Right? I think the key message there is that we as a corporate cultures, we need to start embracing failure more than what we're doing now. Failing is not bad. Failing when innovating is not bad. What you have done is you have discovered a way that doesn't work. Time to learn and move on to the next thing. Failing fast is the key message there. Right? So failing is good for as long as you are capable of learning what's going to happen and how you cannot make that mistake again in the future. And the way of doing that, back again to the topic, is the more you share your knowledge out in the open, the better decisions people will be able to make. So when you're putting new innovations, when you're making even investments or whatever, you're helping people that if it is the right decision, things will move on further. If it is the wrong one, because people were able to collaborate more freely and openly, they will have the ability to fail faster and learn from the experience. So we can allow for small failures to take place in order to keep up with that ramping innovation. And we should not underestimate these little devices. That's what accelerates the knowledge transfer, right? Because that's what helps people understand that the decisions need to be happening almost in real time nowadays, right? And the more informed you are, the better the decision will be.
Great. Thanks for the answer.
No problem.
Well, it's almost 1 p.m. and we promised that we will end by actually 12:45. So I would like to thank you for the attendance. please feel free to have refreshment and talk to Luis and ask him more questions.
I
would like to thank Martin as well. Fortunately, he has to leave us and fly back to New York because we saw him only for a couple hours. So we make sure that you will get Martin's presentation, and feel free to connect with both guys on Twitter and other social networks. And thank you for your time.
No. Hang on. Let me just say one final comment. You guys know what that is? So this is, so let me put it in bigger letters, right? What is that? Oh, you can say it? Get up, come on. So this is a hashtag, right? And then it's LAWWE. So this is living a world without email. This is a Twitter channel where I'm giving free support to anyone in the world who wants to take that challenge of bringing email down. So you thought about sending me an email? No, you tweet on that hashtag and I'll be there. And the most important thing is that this is not just me. There are thousands of people already on that hashtag who are already doing it every day. So that's where you will find me. And also, it was mentioned on the presentation, this is my personal brand. Anywhere you go there, you will find me. And if you still can't find me, the easiest and the most simple one, which is google.com, Luis Suarez, I am not the footballer. And the other one. Thank you, guys.